In Venezuela, the president of the National Assembly presented new evidence which ratifies that there was no coercion or pressure against the ex-presidential candidate of the far right, Edmundo Gonzalez, during their meetings at the Spanish embassy in Caracas. In Haiti, the transition government reaches 100 days in office with little progress and without gaining ground on criminal groups that control part of the national territory. And Israel launched on Friday an aggression against the southern suburb of Beirut in Lebanon, the capital, and 8 people have been reported as fatal victims so far. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, presented a document in which the former presidential candidate of the far right, Edmundo Gonzalez, recognizes the ratification of the triumph of President Nicolás Maduro by the Supreme Court of Justice. Our special envoy in Caracas, Ignacio Lemus, with the details.
Leaving Venezuela, former opposition presidential candidate Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia signed a document recognizing the Supreme Court of Justice's ruling ratifying the electoral victory of President Nicolás Maduro. The signing of the letter took place during a meeting with the Spanish ambassador, the executive vice president Delcy Rodriguez, and the president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez.
And
Mr. Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia continues. Mr. President of the National Assembly, I have always been and will continue to be willing to recognize and abide by the decisions adopted by the organs of justice within the framework of the Constitution, including the aforementioned ruling of the electoral chamber.
Gonzalez Urrutia also stated that he recognizes the 5 institutions of the state. Through the document, the ex-candidate of the extreme right requested authorization for his asylum in Spain and promised that his public activity abroad would be limited. The government of Spain denies having dialogued with Venezuela, but in an exclusive interview with teleSUR, the president of the Legislative Assembly verified that there were conversations.
It was a two-way negotiation. It was a conversation. It was a negotiation between the vice president and the government of Spain for the purpose of the documents, let's say legal. That has to do with the safe conducts that Venezuela has to grant so that people can leave the country, as in the case of Gonzalez Urrutia, who had a request from the Public Prosecutor's Office of the Republic and also to give the approval to a plane of the Spanish Air Force that was to come to pick up Gonzalez Urrutia. Which is another thing that also has incongruities, because they start to say that there was no negotiation. It is that a plane was flying around and decided to land. They think we are still in the 16th century or in the 17th century, when we were a colony of that empire. I am not talking about the 19th century. That hurts them a lot. But it is evident that if that plane lands and is kept in the hangar of the vice presidency of the republic, it is because there is a permission from Venezuela, and that is part of the negotiation with the government of Spain.
During the morning prior to the publication of the letter by the President of the National Assembly, Edmundo Gonzalez's lawyer denied that the document had been signed.
Edmundo Gonzalez confirmed to me directly that he has not signed any document acknowledging the electoral results of the National Electoral Committee in Bulletin Number 1 and Number 2.
The lawyer's speech was refuted by Jorge Rodriguez.
I invite anyone to make a graphological analysis of the signature of Mr. Edmundo Gonzalez. But we are also showing a photograph of Mr. Edmundo Gonzalez signing, And I tell one more anecdote, that a friend of mine laughs at my absent-mindedness. I did not have a pen at that time, and I asked Mr. Gonzalez Urrutia to borrow his pen. My signature is written with Mr. Gonzalez Urrutia's pen, because I did not have a pen.
The lawyer's statements contradict those of his client, who from Spain acknowledges having signed, but assures that it was under duress and considers that the document is null and void. Jorge Rodriguez gave 24 hours for Edmundo Gonzalez to rectify the accusations made.
I have other evidence to the contrary. Do not force me to show them, because I am willing to do so. I have recordings of the meeting I personally had with Mr. Gonzalez Urrutia. Do you want me to show them?
The officialization of the letter comes at a time when the National Assembly is advancing in the investigations on the fascist actions that generated the death of 27 people against the electoral result of last July 28.
Ignacio Lemus y Jesús Romero para Telesur desde Caracas.
Now, in this context, let's see the pieces of evidence presented by the president of the Venezuelan National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, where on the first audio you can see the cordial climate of the meeting held between Edmundo Gonzalez and the Venezuelan authorities, Jorge Rodriguez, and the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Let's see. And also other pieces of evidence show Gonzalez Urrutia's urgent desire to leave the country. Let's see. And in other news, we stay in Venezuela as the National Telecommunications Commission of the country, CONATEL, announced the start of the public bid to develop the fifth-generation frequency of mobile telephone company in the country. On the opening of the second edition of the International Telecommunications FITELVEN 2024 fair, which took place in Caracas, the sectoral vice president of Public Works and Services and general director of CONATEL, Jorge Marquez, confirmed that he gave accounts to President Nicolás Maduro to guarantee the operation of the project. The plan aims at advancing with new technologies and putting them at the service of the population. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro affirmed that the dynasties are the main cause of the increasing drug traffickers and violence in the country. The Colombian head of state rejected the positions of some senators who wanted to annul the discussion of the pension reform bill, thus preventing its approval. In this regard, Petro explained that an aristocracy has governed for years in the nation, generating a profound social inequality that has led to an increased number of drug traffickers and criminals and a great wave of violence. In this context, the Colombian people mobilized on Thursday from different cities to the Bolivar Square to demand that the Constitutional Court passes the pension reform.
A democracy of surnames is not a democracy. Our history has not been a democratic one for that reason. Because it has not been the people who have the power, but those hereditary families who believe they have the divine right not only to govern for generations, but to appropriate national wealth, the public wealth of Colombia, and thus turn us into a country full of drug traffickers. A country with profound social inequality, and a country as violent as the one we have, and from which we must emerge, as the government of change is demonstrating.
And in other news, the plurinational government of Bolivia invited once again indigenous leader Evo Morales to hold a meeting in order to avoid internal clashes between brothers belonging to a single people. Through the Minister of the Presidency, Maria Nela Prada, the executive has called a meeting to be held on Friday at the Ministry of Education in La Paz, headquarters of the plurinational executive. Since the march organized by Evo Morales, some confrontations have been reported, the last of them related to the retention of a press team from the national television station. In order to prevent an escalation of the conflict and more violence, the executive insists on dialogue.
On these days, we have further reiterated the call for dialogue to Evo Morales, and today we invite once again Evo Morales tomorrow, on Friday, September 20th, 2024 at 6 p.m.
Furthermore, Minister Prada once again warned of the dangers that threaten democracy in the South American country.
We identify once again that a new attempt against democracy is brewing in our plurinational state of Bolivia. We alert the people and the international community to a shortening of the mandate and a rupture of the constitutional order.
And Haiti's transitional government, presided over by Gary Conille, completes 100 days in office. The balance sheet reports modest progress in general areas, but none in the management of the most pressing issues. Sponsored by the United States and Canada, the government constituted to resolve the crisis of violence as a top priority, in addition to those related to hunger, health, and fuel supply, has made no progress in any of these areas. Hospitals and schools remain under the control of criminal groups and at the mercy of shortages and deterioration. In political matters, the first steps have been taken to form the Provisional Electoral Council for the elections scheduled for 2026, and work is also being done to structure a Truth Commission. In other news, in Argentina, medical personnel from the largest children's hospital have gone on a 24-hour strike over salaries and better working conditions. Nurses, doctors, and technicians rallied inside the children's hospital and then marched to the health ministry denouncing low salaries, some below poverty levels. In this context, most medical personnel claims they need 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. It is important to mention that inflation continues to seriously affect the country, as August inflation rate was above what both the government and market were expecting, and they were projecting a figure below 4%.
I had 2 jobs until April of this year, and from there, I started calculating because you start to see that it's not enough. On the 4th or 5th of the month, when you pay everything and calculate that there will only be enough to pay for the gas, then you start looking for alternatives.
I rent, and the rent updates are bi-monthly, quarterly, or every 4 months. In my case, it is quarterly. My income is insufficient. In fact, I don't know how I will face future increases in the next 6 months. Today, it already represents between 40 and 50% of my income, which is a lot. The truth is that nowadays, I don't know how to do it, except relying on another job, but it's not enough for me.
We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. We go now to the Middle East as Israel launched on Friday an aggression against a southern suburb in Beirut, the Lebanese capital, and 8 people have been reported as fatal victims so far, among them at least 5 children. The death toll was confirmed by the Lebanese Health Ministry, which also informed that near 59 people were injured during the 4 missiles attacks that targeted buildings in the capital's southern suburbs near the Al-Qaim Mosque complex. In this context, ambulances, Red Cross and civil defense firefighting teams rushed to the targeted location and are working to transport the injured amidst the army's deployment. Meanwhile, in Palestine, Israel has killed more than 14,000 children in 350 days of its genocidal operation in Gaza, according to UNICEF. The most recent report presented by Ted Chevane, Deputy Executive Director of the fund, warns that the number of displaced children has also increased exponentially. Although there is no specific number of children in this line, they confirmed that the overall number of displaced Gazans amounts to 1.9 million. UNICEF calls for an immediate ceasefire to facilitate medical care, the rescue of bodies, and especially the distribution of humanitarian aid. In this context, since August, the number of trucks entering the country with aid has dropped to 100 per day. We go now to culture. In Argentina, a documentary about the dictatorship death flights was presented on Thursday. The film is called Traslados or Transfers and has 90 minutes length and deals with the assassination of political activists during the military dictatorship that ruled Argentina from 1976 to 1983, who were murdered by being thrown from the plains to the Plata River. The documentary counts with testimonies of survivors, investigators, and representatives of human rights organizations, in addition to showcasing archive material and fictionalized recreations. The film, that goes chronologically over the case from the first clues to the court rulings that proved the facts, will be screened in Argentina for the few weeks before its European tour.
The documentary puts evidence on the table and puts together all the pieces and everything that was known from March 24th, 1976 to the present day about the death flights.
The truth is very important. I think it is essential for young people today to know what happened, what students who studied in the same classrooms as us as in the University of Buenos Aires went through, and well, to continue reflecting everything that Argentina and Latin America need, which is to know the truth of everything that happened during the dictatorship.
And the third International Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fair opened its doors in Cuba at the Pabexpo Fairgrounds, where hundreds of companies from more than half a dozen countries are participating in a biannual event. Fabiola Lopez tells us more.
Is a new opportunity to participate in Cuba's energy transition. Businessmen, investors, and high-level experts exchange experiences and technological advances here. The contribution of the United Nations Development Program to the island's energy transition was discussed with teleSUR by its representative in Cuba.
There are 2 lines of action for us. The first has to do mainly with access to energy for communities that live in remote places. In that line of action, what we have been doing so far is installing solar panels that have benefited up to 3,000 families. The second line of action has fundamentally to do with access to energy from the point of view of innovative financing mechanisms. It is fundamental to see how we can offer the government different financing mechanisms that will eventually allow access to energy for large projects.
Achieving 100% participation of clean energies in Cuba's energy matrix is more than a vision for the country, it is a goal. The Cuba Electronica Company, part of the Ministry of Industry, is presenting a project aimed at reducing energy consumption in Cuban homes at this fair.
Such is the case of the rice cookers or cooking equipment used in Cuban homes. The use of fans in this case that work with photovoltaic panels. With energy independent of the industrial network, and also air conditioners that are powered by photovoltaic panels. These air conditioners are inverter technology air conditioners and therefore also contribute to the efficient use of electricity.
The private sector also has a prominent place in this professional platform with news and projects. The Cooperative of Non-Agricultural Production of Integral Services to Transport, Mining and Construction has as one of its main business lines the realization of projects, installation, commissioning and guarantee of photovoltaic systems and solar lights.
We have in our catalog more than 200 luminaires, ranging from the world of domestic luminaires for the home to industrial business establishments. For the future of Cuba, this is very important and transcendental because it is another variant of taking advantage of the sun so intense that cannot be blocked, that is for everyone. And in the case of Cubans, it is very important to be able to use it.
For Renova, a private company dedicated to providing installation and maintenance services for wind and photovoltaic energy systems, the future is today. They provide technologies that contribute to energy efficiency, offer LED lighting and high-performance computer and communications equipment.
Undoubtedly, renewable energies are an alternative for the development of our country, a country that is hit by the energy crisis, and this is a very important alternative. Solutions like the ones we present here are already being tested in different state and non-state actors with good results.
The truth is that this is a path that must overcome technological and cultural challenges. The island's Minister of Energy and Mines warned that there can be no talk of development, of building a prosperous and sustainable socialism, of energy sovereignty and climate change mitigation, without the development of renewable energy sources.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For teleSUR English, my name is Venezuelan National Assembly. Thank you for watching.